So, I think, with my little break, I kind of thought about it. There's not, really much else at this point. I'm sure we'll discover things as we go, but I think this is a pretty good start for now. So I will save this mind map and move on to the next step. And I think there is a plugin a WordPress plugin, which is what we use over at bluetango.com. I think there is a plugin which allows, you to show that mind map and have it be interactive. So, I'll put a post of this up um, on the site so that you can see it and kind of look around with it, fiddle with it, maybe, get inspired to do your own mind map. At least, keep a record of, where we've come from. And I'll also post the link to the software, even though I showed it before. It's called FreeMind. It's from sourceforge.net. So, okay, let's move on to the next thing. Let me move that away. So, I've got the mind map, and we had our core concept in the middle, which is the spaghetti western game we're trying to make, Project Spaghetti. And I chained a whole bunch of things off of it, how the player moves, how the enemies move, how they respond, all the system stuff. Clip in chat what Project Spaghetti is. I will respond to this. Well, I don't have to type because this is live. Project Spaghetti is the game I'm making live. For anyone who's dropped by after I gave the introduction, basically I'm a game developer over here in Japan. I've been working, in a Japanese studio, but trying to show game development live, basically trying to make a project from concept to completion. And Project Spaghetti is just the name of the game that I'm going to be making. And since this is episode 1, we started out with planning, and that's what we're kind of going into. By the time this is done, hopefully we have a 2D shooter, a cowboy game basically. And, as we go through the episodes, you'll see that kind of come to life. Did that answer your question? Well, let me know in chat when my voice catches up if it didn't answer your question. And I'll try to rephrase it or, make more sense of it. But basically, this is a show where, every week I come by for 2 hours to try and make this game. Since there's nothing there yet, it's kind of hard to describe what it is, but it's basically going to be a 2D Western shooter. So we had our mind map, we had stuff in the middle, and we kept breaking things down into categories, and until we had everything that we think we need for the game. Next, I'm going to try to go into a little planning secret. Those little mind map bubbles that we had up there, you're going to want to break those out into individual chunks, into kind of a to-do list, and then the next step is to try to estimate how big a job it will be to do those things. So to do that, obviously this is another part where it's actually better to do it on paper. If you have post-it notes, take every... Oh, cool. All right. I'm glad I could explain it for you. I guess our Clip in chat understood what I was just saying back there. So, but if you have any other questions, let me know. So you want to take those little bubbles that we had. Let me bring that up again because otherwise it doesn't make much sense. So, for example, you're going to want to take, well, let's make it easier, like your cowboy character, this reload, this sound effect, this particle, this sound of, walking, shooting, coughing, scratching himself. All these little things are things you have to do to actually make the game. So you want to pull those out and, for the benefit of the people at home, you don't have to worry about showing people what you're doing, so you can just write it down on a post-it note. Best way to do this, just put it on post-it notes, start sticking them up on a wall or a board somewhere so that you know everything that you have to do to get your game done. Since, I can't show you a giant wall with post-it notes, I'm going to use something else which a lot of people have been using lately, which is called Trello. So let me take that off and bring up Trello. Okay, What Trello is, it's an online, it's an online program. Let's see, I don't think I'll get the Inception effect when I'm doing this web page version. But what Trello is, so that's Trello.com, and you can register for free. You can make your lists public or private. Because I'm showing, I want to show everything that goes into making this game. I've made, this Trello.com board for Project Spaghetti public, so you can drop by anytime you want. I think I've set it up where you can even leave comments on different tasks if you want. Right now, the only tasks I have are coming up with the core idea for a game, making sure to write it on a napkin in an illegible scrawl, which is what I did, although it's not a napkin, and to make the to-do list, which is what I'm doing now. So those are my, tasks. I've divided this up into kind of an agile-based approach, and I'll explain what that is later, but there's the stories, which are kind of the big things. Everything that comes off of that, mind map, the bubble map that I just made, is going to go into stories, because it's something that needs to go into the game to give it value. As I go along, I'm going to break those stories down into tasks. So, a particle, a sound effect, the story is probably the task because it's small enough to accomplish, but, if making a stage, for example, making the graveyard stage is going to involve, well, I should probably add tombstones to the list of things that bullets can bounce off of now that I think about it, but you've got the graveyard, you're going to have, the picture in the background, the kind of thing that all the characters walk on, you're going to have, the placement of the different objects, you're going to have, the way enemies come out, all those things are little things that you have to do. So if you leave that as if you bring that story of, make the graveyard level into, this tasks column, it's kind of hard to tell what you're supposed to do. So in that case, what you want to do, for example, let's do it. Add the story graveyard level. And the kind of things you're going to need to do to make a graveyard level are make the background image. You're probably going to have to lay out the bumper objects. The bumper objects are those things that the bullets are going to bounce off of. You're going to have to decide enemy pattern. You're going to have to decide the win conditions. And just so make this easy to tell what story this came from, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to put the story name in front. Of all of these things that I have to do to get it done, so that I know what these things came from later, and I can tell if I'm done with the story or not. Runiclip asks, why not make an overlay with the live streaming software? Yeah, I guess I could do that. Like, for example, what kind of things would you want to see all at once, rather than flipping around, for example? To get back into it, like, so we've broken one of those bubbles out, the graveyard level story, we've broken it out into some tasks. And here's where I get into that form of planning, which can diffuse some of the downsides of planning, which I mentioned earlier. You can take this list of ideas, your to-do list on Trello.com, or your post-it notes at home, and you start to estimate how long things will take. Try to keep it vague, like this is going to take a long time, or not so long, or this should be quick. You can use words like huge, large, medium, small, and of course, until you actually start to do these things, you're not really going to be 100% sure, if designing the random enemy generator is going to take a lot of time or a little time, or how long a sound effect is going to take. There are probably going to be a lot of surprises, but that's not the point. The point is to just estimate what you think they'll take. And there's a reason that'll be important that'll come up later. So, getting the estimates right is actually not that important. Estimating is important. So I'm going to do that at Trello. I'm going to assume that with my drawing skills, being as poor as they are, graphics stuff is going to take me a little longer. Let's see, like the background image, probably going to take me, oh man, if I've got buildings and stuff there. Well, if it's the graveyard, I won't have buildings. Yeah, maybe it won't actually take that long for the graveyard. So the background image, maybe, it'll take 2 hours. But let's just say to make the graveyard level, this is going to be, actually let me put it in here. I'm going to say this is going to be a medium-sized task. And let's see, for the cowboy, okay, Runiclip got back to me. Above your green screen, you can put a list in Sublime, Notepad++, or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. I will try to see if I can arrange this thing a little better so that you can see, FreeMind, when I'm using FreeMind, Trello, all these different things. I'll try to come up with an overlay that maybe has links to these different things that I'm using so you can go to it directly. I'll think of something, but, good idea. Thank you for the advice. And Jamorian also says, probably be a good idea to add a header or footer to this that will become a frequently asked questions thing, which is also a good idea because, people that are just jumping into this are probably seeing a talking head with Trello.com and wondering what the heck is going on. So I will definitely put all that stuff down there as we go. Thank you for the good ideas, guys. So let's see, let's add, let's start adding all these things to Trello.com. Let's see, where do we want to start? Pad guys. Also, just so you know, I have a really, really old school monitor. Very hard to see everything at once. So I will keep flipping back and forth as I go. Actually, the player would probably be a huge task. Let's keep the naming the same here. The bullet, since it's going to be bouncing off of stuff, but it'll be easy to draw, so I'll just make that large. It's probably going to be about the same as the bad guys. The town level. That one's actually going to be large because if I have to draw some buildings with my horrible art skills, I'm sure it'll take a good chunk of time to do that. The desert level. It's a desert, so there's not that much going on, so that'll probably be medium. Night level. Depends on what's going on at the night level, but since I don't know yet, that's going to be part of it, so I'll make that large. Music, title screen music. That's, since I'm definitely not a music expert by any means, to compose a song is probably going to take me quite a while, so it's definitely going to take me longer than, you know, drawing a desert. So I'll make those large. Level music, large. Desert, music, large. And let's see. For demos, for a demo, you know, if I'm going to have an opening demo where the guy's coming out and doing some stuff, you know, moving them around, I guess it depends on exactly what that demo is going to be. If it's an in-game demo, then it's probably not going to take too long because I can just use, you know, whatever walking animation, but, you know, maybe there'll be special animation, so let's go ahead and make that large. A large undertaking. Ending demo, same thing, make it a large undertaking. Pause music. Let's see, the system stuff. Having you know, keeping track of the level in a variable. That's just going to be, you know, going into GameMaker, which is the tool I'll be using. You know, it'll be going into GameMaker, you know, probably doing about 2 lines of code. So that's going to be, you know, thankfully a small task. Probably all of these variables are going to be small tasks because all it is, you know, saying I want to store a certain number in a named variable. I should actually make that bullets so it makes some sense to me later. The high score. Those are all just numbers that get stored in the game, so they are all small. And we've also got difficulty. Okay, so we've got, those are the system things. Leaderboards. Wow. For me, that's going to be huge because I don't know exactly whether or not I can even do networking stuff, so there's going to be a lot of studying and everything else involved. Going to have to write, you know, something that either sits on a server or sits somewhere out there that keeps track of, you know, different people's scores, feeds it to them. You know, anything involving a network is always going to be a huge task, even if you know what you're doing, and since I don't know what I'm doing yet, yeah, that's huge. So let's go over to our HUD. We're going to need the score multiplier. Since this is more than just setting a number somewhere in code, this is actually showing something on the screen. This isn't going to be small, but you know, if I have a font in place and it just overlays onto the screen, yeah, I guess once I get used to putting things on the HUD, it won't take that long. It would probably not take as long to do as to draw some of these levels up here. Yeah, I will make HUD score multiplier a small task. I'll make all the HUD tasks small. And let me go ahead and add this to the top so that you can see what's going on, because the list is starting to scroll pretty long. Let's see, to show the number of bullets that the player has left, that's going to take a little more work. So Yeah, let's make that medium. High score, and showing the player's score, there's going to be text on the HUD, so those will also be kind of small. Showing the lives, you know, assuming that we're going to have some kind of picture to represent the lives, that'll be another medium. So let me move these up. And options. This is under GUI, so actually it should probably be broken out into GUI and system. So GUI options, music sound level, showing a music sound bar level. That's probably going to be another medium thing. GUI options, sound effects level, medium. Let's go ahead and add the system tasks while I'm thinking about them. So system, music, sound level, and system, sound effects level. This is definitely one unfortunate thing about using Trello, is because it's a website, kind of hard to show you what's going on. Hopefully it's updating properly. Let me know if you can't see the stuff that's going into the list as I move it up there. But I made the system. You know, what I did was from that mind map, I took the GUI options, music sound level, sound effects level, and broke it into two pieces, you know, GUI options and system. Because you're going to need, you know, the actual option screen GUI, which is what the player sees. And you're also going to need the variable that keeps track of how loud this stuff is. So those are actually two separate tasks. It's probably better to break those down. We're also going to have to do the same thing for brightness and resolution. So, you know, the GUI elements are probably going to take some drawing to make a little bar that expands and goes smaller. Maybe Game Maker comes with something that will make that easier, but I'm just going to assume they're medium tasks. Whereas, you know, holding a variable that says how bright the screen is going to take no time at all. So the system tasks are small. Let's see, we've also got sound effects, sound level. So those are our options. But we're going to need a pause screen. Making a pause screen is going to, you know, probably want something in the background so it's not just a blank pause screen. So it's probably going to be medium because there is some graphics work involved. And a resume control so that when the player wants to leave the pause screen, they can. And and a quick control. You know what? I think I have an idea here. I am going to, rather than just bring up this, Trello page and try to shift things back and forth, I'm going to actually just bring up my browser as a window. Let me get that ready. Okay, I think it's ready already. Let's see. So I'm going to add that to the broadcasting software. I'm just going to capture, what I'm doing in Firefox. Yeah, there we go. I think that's, a ton better than... Let's move this over here. And get rid of Trello. This will be a lot better, I hope. Because just having the web page up there, yeah, it updates, but you can't actually see what I'm writing. So I'm just sitting here talking, and that's not very exciting. Unfortunately, my monitor is not very big. So now you can kind of see what I'm going through back and forth between that mind map I made and Trello up there. Hopefully this will help make what I'm explaining or talking about make more sense. So, I was down here at the bottom writing tasks and how large they are. I'm going to keep doing that. So we've got game over screen. Again, assuming that there's actually going to be a graphic there, I'm going to have to draw something, so that's going to be medium. For this game over screen, restart control, that's going to be probably small. Game over screen. I guess you're going to need a quick control too, now that I think about it. So let me add that to the mind map. And I'm going to try to go a little faster so I can actually get this thing done. Title screen is going to be medium. I'm sure you've gotten the point of what I'm doing here, so I'm going to just go through this quicker. Title screen, start button control. That's just the system aspect that takes it into the game. That's not going to be too hard. Quitting the game is definitely not going to be hard. Although it will be my job to try and make you not want to quit. Why is the stuff in Japanese? Well, yeah, that's a good point. I'm sorry about that. I live in Japan. My computer's a Japanese computer, so by default, a lot of the software installs into Japanese. I don't think... I think FreeMind, I switched it to English, so hopefully you can see all that in English. The other thing is just the browser at the top, Firefox basically. It's just file, edit, all that stuff. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Hopefully Trello and FreeMind aren't in Japanese. If they are, let me know, because what I'm seeing will be different than what you're seeing. If anyone wants to donate a bigger monitor for me, that would be much appreciated. Okay, so tutorial bullet rebound. I'm going to... Let's see, do I want to break these up? Yeah, I'll break them up. GUI. That's just going to be, kind of a wall of text, maybe a picture. Let's keep that medium. Tutorial bullet rebound. The text part of it's not going to be that difficult to write. Tutorial dodging GUI medium. Tutorial dodging text small because it's just the wall of text. Runiclip asks, why not live in North America or Europe? Well, good question. Well, I guess I'm in Japan working here, so I guess this is where my house is, so that's why I live here. But yeah, good question. Maybe someday I'll go back to the States where I'm from. But, you know, for now, I'm still living in Japan. I'm working here. So I'll probably be in Japan for a little while longer. You know, I learned Japanese back in college and I've been kind of using it. You know, at first I started out programming and then I moved into kind of translation from there, you know, more into game design and stuff like that. But, you know, long story short, I've ended up out here in Japan. Man, this is just where I live. It just happens to be where I live. Tutorial, movement, GUI, medium, tutorial, movement, text small, and thank you. Okay, so most of it is in English. If something is in Japanese and you want to know what it is, please let me know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say what it is in Japanese if you can't read it, but just, you know, do let me know if something is in Japanese because it might slip my mind. Is that it for tutorials? Yeah, it looks like it. So let's scroll up. So now we've got the bullet. The bullet sprite. Bullet sprite's not going to take that long to draw. Bullet animation. I don't even know if there is going to be real animation. It's probably going to be more like script side, you know, just moving animation and moving the bullet and rotating it. So it's not going to be, you know, jumping into some, you know, rendering program and creating stuff. But, you know, to get it right, it's going to take a little time, so I'll keep that at medium. Actually, let me make that task broken up. Flying through the air. Bullet animation. Speeding up. Maybe all of this will be handled on the software side, but let's keep it in here as a task. Actually, I'm probably breaking these stories down way too much, because that's actually what the tasks are going to be. You know, the specific things to get something done is going to be a task. So, you know, I probably don't need to dive into sound effects and particles and stuff like that at this point. The important thing is that the bullet flies through the air, the bullet speeds up. Okay, well, there we go. So I will worry about those things when I actually break these things down into tasks, which I will explain soon. So first thing is bad guys sprite. That's going to be a medium task. Bad guy action. Shooting. To actually have the bad guy shoot. That'll be a medium task. Action. Actually, no, that's actually going to be a large task. Or a large story. Because not only do I have to get the bad guy to shoot, I have to know when they're going to shoot, you know, set it up to make them shoot, do particles, sound effects, all that stuff. To actually have them moving around. Moving them around is not going to be that tough, but, you know, making them follow the player, have, you know, smart patterns is going to be tough. Runiclip says you need a script or some sort of loop to remove the bullet after a certain distance or time. Yep, definitely. We will need that. So let's see. That's a good point. Let's go ahead and add that. Well, actually, do we want to do that? Because it is going to be a bullet pinging around until it hits something, either the player or an enemy, and those bullets are just going to keep coming, but there probably is going to be some kind of limit. So let's go ahead and add that. At least it's good to keep track of it to make sure. Well, let's not add it to actions. Let's add it to actions. I mean, disappearing. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to have the bullets disappear at some point, or at least to have some system in place to prevent the screen from getting too clogged with bullets. You know, we can figure that out as we start the game to see if bullets are going to need to disappear or not. Maybe they will. You know, maybe we start the player with just 6 bullets, and once those are gone, they're gone, and you just have to keep dodging as they get faster and faster and hope they hit the enemy first. But we'll figure that out. Let's see, bad guys, action. They can shoot, they can dodge, they can reload. Oh yeah, I need to add dodging. Bad guys, action, they do dodge. That's going to be a large task too, because there's going to have to be rolls. Obviously, you know, a computer is going to be controlling the bad guys, so if we wanted to, we could have them just always dodge the bullet. That's probably not a good idea, because that's not going to be very fun. So we're going to have to come up with rules to figure out, you know, when a bad guy can successfully dodge and when they can't. And, you know, a lot of these things are going to apply to the player too, but that'll be a separate task. So player, action, shoot, player, action, reload, player, action, dodge. And the dodge system I kind of have in mind is while you're dodging, you know, you can't shoot, so that's one disadvantage, and you're probably also going to have to time the dodge. So if you dodge too early, you get hit by the bullet because it comes at you, or if you dodge too late, obviously you get hit by the bullet. So that's kind of how I've got the dodge system in mind. Oh yeah, player, action, movement. You know, movements may not be that much work. Let's see. I'm going to need player sprite. We're going to need the player sprite. I'm going to say that's medium to draw. But then once we start getting to animation, that's going to take a lot of work, because I'm going to have to overlay the sprites on top of each other. You know, have the player doing his idle thing, raising his hand little by little, holding up a gun, shooting it, and then the gun goes back down. So all this animation stuff's going to be, you know, pretty large, at least since I'm not a great artist or anything else, so it's going to be large for me. So the walking animation is going to be large, sprite, animation, shooting is going to be large. Dodging is going to be large. Getting hit is going to be large. Sprites. Animation. Dying. Well, maybe dying will be easy. I don't know. We'll see. But I'll keep it at large for now. Sprites. Animation. Idle. Cough. Large, player, sprites, animation, idle, scratch, himself, large, player, sprites, animation, general, idle. That's going to be large too. And then finishing the level and starting the level animations. You know, maybe I can reuse some walking animations, things like that, but, you know, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to keep these tasks large. Okay, now let's see, objects. Again, since particles, sound effects, the graphics, you know, those are going to be small components of getting the thing I want in the game. The thing I want in the game, for example, is a barrel that reflects a bullet. So I'm not going to break it down into small things here. Let's just go bumper, barrel. Let's see. I guess it depends on whether the barrel moves or not. Let's assume it doesn't move. Let's assume that it just kicks off some, particles when the bullet hits it. Maybe makes a sound effect. So a static graphic. And program. Let's see. We're gonna have a particle and everything else going in it, but it's not gonna be as hard to do as player animation. So I'm gonna keep these these pinball bumper style things at medium. Let's see, we got buildings. Bumpers. Cacti. Bumpers. Punch bell. Medium. Actually, let's change buildings to large, because I'm probably going to need multiple buildings. So that's actually going to be more work to draw. So I will change that. Lunch bells. What else did I have? Bones. Like the old cow skull out in the desert. Maybe the bullet reflects off of that. And then the thing I remembered before, if we're going to have a graveyard level, obviously we need tombstones. So that's probably going to be a bumper. And let's add that here. And it's going to do the same thing that all the others do. It's going to reflect bullets, kick off particles, kick off sound effects. And let's see, we've already got, the town level, the desert level, the night level. We've already got all that. Enemy pattern. Yeah, that's fine. Background enemy pattern. Level manager. Did I? I don't think I put the level manager in yet, did I? No, okay, level manager. That probably actually belongs under system, so I'm going to move that. Let's see, to switch from level to fade in and out. To keep track, maybe have some music. It's probably not going to be that much work, I hope. So, yeah. Oh, well, I didn't add that. Alright. Oh, no, there it is. Okay. I guess it's just reached some kind of visible limit, which is kind of annoying. No, okay, I just didn't hit enter yet. Let's see, I did already put the music in. I put the demos in. I've got all the system stuff in. I've got the HUD stuff in. Yep. Got the HUD stuff in, got the GUI stuff in. Pause screen, game over screen. Bullet rebound. Yeah, the bullet behavior, got that in. Tutorial, do I have the tutorial? I think, yeah, I did put the tutorial stuff in. Yep. Let's see. I think I did skip some stuff when it comes to the enemies. Yeah, I just kept that at bad guys large. Since we did break player down, actually, since I've already broken these down, these don't belong here. Since I've already broken those down into player and bad guys. Like here. Got the sprite, got the action, those are all large tasks, dodging, movement. Bad guys, action. Well, the bad guy's also going to die, so I need that. So bad guys, action. Action. Getting hits. Obviously, since that's going to involve animation, that's going to be large. Bad guys, action, dying, large. And okay, I've got the bullet stuff. I think for the most part I've got everything that's in this free mind. Let's expand that out. Okay. Yeah, I think for the most part I've got everything that's in this free mind at least represented as a story in that Trello.com list. I will be putting this free mind up on the site, which is bluetengu.com. And you can also access this Trello board. I think you can access it just by going to Trello.com Project Spaghetti. Let me try. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes, which will be on bluetengu.com as well. And, you know, if it's YouTube, I'll probably put a link somewhere or, you know, a note somewhere about it. But I have made this Trello.com thing public, as you can see there. So, you know, it should be visible. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back to the Trello.com static page here. So we've got, you know, the Trello.com list. You know, if you're working at home, you've basically got a stack of Post-it notes that describe everything that you need to do to make this game. So what you want to do next is to arrange this list in terms of priority. Obviously, some things are more important than others. Like for me, you know, getting the game working is the goal, the first goal. So, you know, putting things in like leaderboards and particles, those are going to be lower priority than, you know, things like getting the player in the game and moving. So, like, for example, I would go over to Trello.com. If you've got Post-it notes, you know, whatever system you organize, maybe you have it where Post-it notes that are higher on your wall are the ones that you want to do first, and the ones towards the bottom are the ones that you want to get to later. The important thing, you know, even if you have just a list on your Word document or whatever, the important thing is to have some system where you know what tasks are higher priority than others. Yeah, Renaclip mentioned I don't have to have a window open for OBS, you know, open broadcasting software, for it to be on the screen. Yeah, I could just keep it minimized, I guess. I don't know. There's just something paranoid in me about wanting to make sure that the stream's not cutting out and stuff. But yeah, that's actually probably a good idea to keep it minimized so I can get more screen real estate. Thank you for letting me know. You know, good idea. So I will go ahead and minimize that, actually, so I can actually see more of my screen. Thank you. So, you know, you've got your priority list here. Put more, you know, for Trello.com, since it's listed from top to bottom, I'm just going to arrange things so that the things at the top of the list are higher priority than the things at the bottom of the list. So, you know, a pause screen, yeah, pause screen's probably not that important, so I'm just going to, you know, shove that towards the bottom. You know, you have to have a game before you can pause it. Difficulty, yeah, we can worry about difficulty later, so that's not going to be high priority. You know, brightness, things like that, you know, that's all the bells and whistles. If it doesn't get done, you still have a game. You know, sound levels, all that stuff's going to go down. Let's jump from the Trello.com page to Firefox to show you what I'm doing here. So, you know, sound levels, that's not important. That's not important. HUD showing lives and score and high score, kind of important. Let's see, probably the most important thing is to actually have a level first. So I'm going to move the first level, the town level, up to the very top so that I have a place to put all this stuff. Runeclip asks, how big is the team of Blue Tengu? We've got a couple of people helping out with the site and stuff like that. The actual game development itself is actually just a one-man team, me. That's actually part of the concept, because if we have a team, you know, most people don't have a team, so it's not going to really inspire people to try and go out and do this stuff themselves. So, you know, we've just basically decided it's me that's going to be doing the game design stuff. That includes drawing, making music, sound effects. You know, the fact that it's just one person and I'm struggling with it is actually kind of an advantage, because if any of you guys out there are going to start a game on your own, you know, just to get something done, it's probably more helpful to see someone struggle with it, because if you see a bunch of experts kind of doing their thing, yeah, there's definitely value in that, because you can learn, you know, better ways to do things. You know, watching a professional artist draw is one good way to learn how to draw, but I think there's kind of value as well in watching someone that can't draw, because if you can't draw, then you don't feel so bad. But, you know, to answer your question, yeah, we've got other people that work on like site and, you know, helping out with different things. You know, like the blue screen. You know, the person that made the blue screen, that's not me, for example. But, you know, for the most part, it's me doing this stuff. So getting back to it, we've got the town level. The next thing we're going to want is a player. A player that can move, I think, should be my next biggest priority task. Let's see, the next thing the player should be able to do is shoot. So if nothing else, have a town level that a player can move around in and shoot in. To shoot's going to require a bullet. So I'm going to need that bullet sprite sooner than later. Animation. Animation stuff can come later. You know, you could just show the sprite and a bullet coming out of it for the beginning, at least to, you know, test the game concept out. So I'll leave animation down here towards the bottom. Reloading, yeah, dodging is actually going to be kind of critical to the game, so I'll keep that towards the top. Maybe I'll put it below HUD. Level manager until we have other levels, that's not very important. Bad guys can actually come later. First we just want a player that can shoot bullets winging around the screen, since the main concept is to kind of emulate pinball with a bullet going around and bouncing off of stuff. So let's have a bumper. We're going to need one of those soon to test this thing out and actually have the bullet behaving like it should. So I'll put that right below bullet. Actually, since I broke bullet down, I don't need this. HUD score. Yeah, the score multiplier is actually going to be kind of part of the game, but yeah, since it affects score, I'll put it up here. And the number of bullets you have is kind of important too. Maybe it won't be so important until you start reloading. The other levels, that can come later. Difficulty, brightness, music sound level, pause screen, yeah, all that stuff can come later. Pause music, that stuff can come later. Level can come later. Obviously, if I'm going to have a GUI that shows the score multiplier, I'm going to have the variable that handles that. I just need one bumper to start with. Don't really need a level manager until towards the end. I'll need that before I get to other levels though. So before I can do the graveyard level, I need something that allows me to get to the graveyard level. Let's move this stuff down to the bottom. Let's see. Let's start moving bad guy stuff up, because after we get the bullet bouncing around, we probably do want some bad guys. Actually, system stuff comes before HUD. GUI options, sound effects line. Let's move that further down, further down, further down. System, music, sound, graveyard level, system. Level comes later, bullets come first. I'm going to need the system before I do the HUD. And I'm going to need all of this system stuff, so let's see. Well, no, level's going to be around the level manager stuff. Tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. The tutorial stuff can come later, because, you know, the person making the game knows how to play it, so. That's more for the end user. That comes later. Let's see, system resolution, high score. High score needs to come before the GUI high score stuff. Let's see, system score needs to come. And it makes sense to have score before working on high score, so let's move that down further. High score is actually not that important because I'm not playing this to beat my old score, per se, right off the bat. System music sound level, sound effects, system lights, title screen music, opening demo, system lives. Yeah, lives is kind of important. Probably before high score. So let's move HUD lives down to there. System score multiplier. Score comes before the multiplier. And in general, let's see. I've got the level. I've got a player that can actually move around it. Do I have player sprite here? Yeah, I need to move that up to the top. Yeah, there we go. I actually need to see this thing that I'm moving around. So that'll be the next step. So I've got the town, I've got the picture of the guy, I've got a player that can move around, I've got a player that can shoot, bullets come out. Let's see. I probably need some bullet stuff. Bullet animation. Yeah, we'll do it with the system in the beginning. So I've got a bullet. Move it around with system stuff. Bounces off. I'll just put a bumper barrel down. You know, that's a graphic. Keep track of score, skull multiplier, bullets, lives. I probably need to have the player being able to die, because otherwise there's not much point to the bullet flying around. Yeah, but that can be a system thing. So I probably actually need to add that system. Well, no. Player system. Basically just bullet collision. If the bullet hits the sprite that the player's in, the player has to go into a die state. We can separate the animation afterwards. So let's see, until the bullet bounces around, the player's not going to be able to get hit, so let's move that down there. Renaclip asks about sprite managers and enemy managers. For the enemy manager, I've kind of grouped that into, let's see, where is it? Probably the level manager. Yeah, the system level manager is going to be kind of the enemy manager. Yeah, it might be a good idea to break that out, actually. So, actually a good idea. Let's break that out into a separate task. And I'll add this back into the bubble chart, too. Enemy manager. Let's keep that medium, since that's actually kind of tough. And I'm actually going to need that pretty early, because if I'm going to be putting bad guys out on the screen, I'm going to need something to shove them out on the screen. The sprite manager, I guess since I'm using GameMaker, it's kind of inside the tool itself. So I may not need to do too much with that. But, you know, maybe I will need a sprite manager at some point. But I think GameMaker should be able to handle the spriting stuff, because you can put sprites and objects into, well, the sprites and animation into an object, which kind of becomes your sprite manager, your character manager. So I should be okay on that one. But thank you for the enemy manager idea. It's probably a good idea to separate that out from levels, so I know what I'm working on. I can worry about the details of priority later. Probably do want to actually have the bad guys shooting fairly early. Certainly before the pause screen. Maybe before the player can dodge. Bumpers, bad guys, action, dying. Tutorials, alright. I think we're pretty good. Okie dokie. So that's just the basic Trello. I've kind of broken out that free mind bubble map into, individual things that I can go through and do. So for example, if I look at this list, I know I have to do a town level. Now here's where we're going to break things down a little bit. So we've got the list in terms of priority, more or less. I can fiddle with some of the more individual priorities, like, tutorials and what's more important in a tutorial or a pause screen later. But at least I've got my highest priority things at the top. And why is that important? Well, getting a game working is number one. So I need to move the tasks that get the game working to the top. Things like players, having a stage, enemies shooting, and move the things that aren't so important to getting things, getting a game, like graphics, animation, music, sound effects, particles. All that stuff can come later because it's kind of the window dressing. Obviously, if you have a team with, an artist, a programmer, if you have a huge team with, dedicated particle designer or an animator or something like that, then obviously your priorities are going to change, because you don't want to just have everyone sitting around waiting while someone's coming up with the game itself. So, one other warning I guess I should put in to this is to not get too excited about tools. Like, if you do need to learn a new tool, that's probably actually going to be a task that you put up in that list. Like for example, if you have to learn how to use whatever you use, like Krita, if you're using a free spriting program, or if you're using Photoshop, to do animation, you're gonna have to learn to do all that stuff. And for me, I'm using GameMaker for the first time. Well, not the first time, but I've piddled around in it, but that's about it. So it's basically like learning it for the first time. All these different tool things, you're gonna have to put that in that list, because that's something you need to do. It takes time to get around your tools, but you have to be careful. Don't go hog wild learning a bunch of tools in the beginning, especially if it's a tool that's going to make things more efficient, because what'll end up happening is you'll spend all your time learning how to do tools, and you're not going to actually get any work done. Or worse, you're going to hunt around for tools, not really knowing what you need, and kind of getting excited about all these different tools that people are using, spending a bunch of time, going through YouTube tutorials or whatever, learning how to use them. And then what's going to happen is, if you don't have a game or you don't have a vision in place before you start learning about tools, what's going to happen is you're going to start shaping your game to fit the tools, and that's not a very good idea. You'll waste a lot of time doing that. A lot of first-time game makers, not just game makers, but anything, if you're a writer, a lot of first-time writers start going out and learning about, Scrivener and all these different tools and things like that, because they look great and people talk about them. But, do the work first, then look into tools when things start to feel repetitive. Obviously, you need a very basic set of tools, like you need a game engine. Well, unless you're going to make a game engine yourself, you're going to need a game engine, which is, why I have GameMaker. You're going to probably, if you're doing a game, you're going to need a drawing tool. I just happen to have, Illustrator and Photoshop, but if you don't have that, you're going to have to go out and, find, a free tool like Krita, Krita, for example. There's other ones out there too. There's plenty of them out there. You're going to need something to draw, because you're going to need stuff to put in the game. So yeah, there's a minimum level of tools you'll need, but don't worry about learning them until you absolutely need to. Do the work first, then look into tools when things start to feel repetitive. Sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like it's a good idea to start building your efficiency in front. Put it all up front, learn how to be efficient first, and then start doing the work, because obviously there's less work to be done if you're efficient. But I can warn you, nobody loves tools or efficiency more than me. At all my jobs, I've always been the macro king. If something's done manually in Excel, I'll start to look at, how you can start automating it and everything else. I'm known for being the guy that goes in there and says, why are you doing it this way over and over and over again when you can just do it faster this way? Even so, you need a nail before you can find the right hammer. You need people doing stuff the hard way so that you know what the easy way is. So at the very least, start doing things the hard way first. Get things done. Draw a picture, put your game systems in, then start looking into tools. It'll help you recognize when something's useful, and it'll help you avoid goofing off and playing with tools rather than making progress on your project. It's way too easy to run out of steam if you don't get a working game soon, so just remember that. Try to move tools later. You know, if it's your first project, even doing everything the hard way, keep the project scope low. You know, make something simple, 2D game, shooter, whatever. Just keep it easy. Finish it. That's the goal. Game Maker, which I'll be using, should be plenty to get a working game going. It's in the name, right? If it's Game Maker, it should be able to make a game. Same advice goes for like equipment. Same advice on equipment and technique applies to everything else you're trying to do. Whenever you're doing something for the first time, people who talk all day about writing, writing tools, for example, never seem to do any writing. People who sit on message boards trying to find the best way to do things all day don't seem to actually get things done. You know, there's plenty of unfinished projects out there. You want to get it finished. You want to get a project finished. So, we've got our list of things we want in the game. It's more or less in the order we want to implement them. Some of the stuff at the bottom, I haven't bothered sorting into priority yet because we're not even going to get to it yet. But I've got the highest priority stuff there at the top. What you want to do next is to break these things into chunks. So for example, I have, the story up there. Make a town level. What does that involve? Well, when I come to this next week and I want to make a town level, I don't want to be sitting there scratching my head wondering, what it takes to make a town level. I want to be actually able to just start working. So these things at the top of the list, like town level, player, sprite, player action movement, player action shoot, things like that, you want to break those down into tasks. So I used the graveyard level example for making some tasks, but I'm going to change this to town level since that's the first one I want to make. So for example, to have that town level story done, I'm going to need to draw something in Illustrator or Photoshop that goes in the background. I'm going to need to lay down the bumper objects, but that'll come later after I have a bumper object. I'm going to need to decide an enemy pattern. That'll come later after I have enemies. I'm going to need win conditions, which is going to come after I have enemies. But at the very least, I need that background image, and I need some bumper objects. For player, sprite, the story is the task. I need to draw a player sprite. For player action movement, I'm going to need the scripting that does that. I'm going to need do I want to do animation this early? Probably not. But I'll put it up there so I don't forget about it. I'm going to need player action shoot scripting, what button you push that makes it shoot, what happens when you shoot. That's right, my animation's in a different thing, so I don't need to worry about that. I don't even know why I was putting that there. Okay, so player action shoot scripting, bullet. I'm going to need to draw the sprite. For the bumpers, barrel, I'm going to need the sprite. I'm going to need the rebound effect. So I'm going to need collision. I decided not to put animation on it. I'm going to need particles, bumpers, barrel, sound effects. And that's obviously low priority, so that's going to be later, but just so I don't forget it, I'm going to break it down. Let's see, bumpers, barrel, I have the sprite, the collision, the particles. I'm going to need the bullet. Let's see. I'm going to need player collision if he's going to die. Actually, that's under sprite. Oh, is it? No. It's kind of in its own category. I'm going to need the player collision. going to need the player system dying, which is scripting. Anything else? Do I want to delete the player? Nah, I can worry about that stuff later, visible stuff later. I'm going to need the variables that keep track of the score. I'm going to need HUD score, which is going to be text, probably. Score multiplier. A lot of these tasks, because they're small, they're basically, the story is the task. Having a system variable that keeps track of score, it's not going to take long to do. That is the task. So HUD score, system multiplier, HUD score multiplier. So that's going to be the text that overlays onto the screen. System bullets. I didn't put that up there yet. So that's a good way to get us started. So, by the time we're done with these tasks, we'll have a level that you can look around on, lay out the bumper objects, that comes after bumpers, decide enemy pattern, that comes way later. So we have a background image, we have our win conditions, that'll come after enemies as well. Background image, player, a picture, being able to move that picture around on the level, being able to shoot, having a bullet picture, having bumpers around on the level, laying out the bumper objects, having player collision. I guess that's another good thing, bumper object, bumpers. Oh, I do have barrel collision there, so never mind that. You've got the bumper barrel, the sprite, the collision, particles, and sound effects. That's just not important at all, so that goes way down there. Not important at all. Player collision. We've got dying scripting, we've got some scores, we've got the multiplier, since the multiplier thing is going to be pretty important to the game. We've got system, we got the bullets, what a bullet is in terms of the game, how many bullets you have. I should probably bring the HUD thing over there too. So let's see, HUD score text, bullets, system bullet, HUD bullets. And there's probably going to be a sprite that represents what that bullet is instead of text. Let's see, HUD score multiplier, that's going to be text, system, lives, it's probably worth doing. HUD, lives, that's probably also going to be a sprite as opposed to text. High score is going to be text. Oh, sorry, that belongs in the HUD thing. System high score. I think my coffee's running out here. System high score. All right. Good thing to get us started. All right. So we've broken these things down into tasks. I know exactly what I need to do now. If I come in next week, it's like, all right, I've got a town level. I need to design a background image. I've got a player. I need to draw the player. I need to put this stuff in the game. All these different tasks that are there. I should probably add that actually. Town level. Put in the game. Now that we've got the chunks, what we want to be doing with this is breaking these chunks down into how long they're going to take. In general, I've tried to break them down into something I can actually get done within a show. So most of them for me are going to be about an hour and a half, an hour. Since otherwise, they'd take more than a week and you'd watch me drawing something for a week and never showing you the Trello board or anything moving. If you are able to do game development for, say, for example, 40 hours a week, You want to shoot for breaking things down into probably 5 hours or less to account for like bathroom breaks, lunch breaks, meetings, phone breaks, all that kind of stuff that comes up. If it's just 2 hours, you probably don't need a break because you're in your flow. So, for example, to do a background image, to get really specific on this, I would say background image is probably going to be 1 hour. Yeah, 1.5. Putting it in the game, that's going to be real quick. That's going to be like half an hour. Drawing a sprite for a character, that's probably going to be an hour and a half. Putting it in the game is going to be quick. That'll be half an hour, probably. Scripting, I don't know, Game Maker makes it pretty easy, so to actually get a character that moves up, down, left, right, into the corners, let's not underestimate this. To shoot just the scripting part of it, let's make that an hour or two. To draw a bullet, yeah, it's not going to take long. It's a bullet. To get it the right size, well, let's keep it at half an hour. To draw a barrel, with my drawing skills, let's say an hour. To add collision to the barrel is not going to take long at all, probably. To lay out those bumper objects, to make it a bumper object and to lay it out, that's not going to take too long. To add some player collision, that's not going to take long. It's probably just going to be the same size as the sprite, at least in the beginning. The dying, that's just a collision. When the bullet hits the player, those two, the collision is basically that thing that wraps the bullet and tells you when something happens. So you have this little box around this bullet graphic, and you have a box around your player graphic. And when those two boxes overlap, that means you have an event. You need to handle that event, in this case by having the player die. To make a score variable is not going to take very long at all, so I'll make that 15 minutes. To put text out there, half an hour. Who knows what things could go wrong with that. Score multiplier, again, to put text out there, it's better to overestimate than to underestimate. Don't try to get too realistic. System bullets. Decide an enemy pattern. Well, this is a big thing. This might take more than an hour and a half, but let's just say it's an hour and a half. Win conditions, basically when all the enemies that I'm going to fire out are dead, move to the next level, so that's just half an hour. Particles, this comes later, so let's not estimate this stuff now. This is just here so I don't forget it. So, bumper particles, let's move that down a little further. To the bottom. Sound effects to the bottom. Bullets, yeah. To do a bullet sprite, I'll probably reuse the actual bullet itself. Let's see. Let's keep track of my chat here. I think I should make textures before you do the next stream to keep things going. Yeah, RiniClip mentioned, rather than showing me drawing stuff, it's probably better to have all that drawing in advance so I can just pop it into the game. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about it. The concept of this is not so much a tutorial, it's more, basically, I just want to show everything I'm doing to make the game from start to finish, and that includes, all the ums and ahs, all the hunting around for tools, everything else, because the concept is, there are a lot of great tutorials out there for Game Maker and everything else. If you're already kind of comfortable with making games and you just want to learn how to make a game in Game Maker, or if you just want to watch people making, professionals going at it making games, definitely a lot of good resources out there. Kind of want to try a different concept with this, and that's showing, all the grunt work too, just so people kind of have an idea of what goes into making a game, because if I don't show that grunt work and I show up with pictures and things in advance, textures in advance, it's going to look a lot easier than it is, and that might turn a couple of people off when they start to do it themselves. So, yeah, I mean, efficiency-wise, it would definitely be better to not show me drawing stuff on the stream, and I'm sure those will be episodes where a lot of people decide to tune out, or if they're watching this on YouTube, skip over the drawing stuff. But, it's hard to tell in advance what kind of things are going to be useful to which people, so you know, just consider this a camera into my room with me making a game. And that includes all the boring stuff. So, could you not make a boolean to Runiclip asks, could you not make a boolean to designate it as bumper or not a bumper? Yeah, probably. I think with the game image I've got in mind, I want everything to be a bumper. So if it's a building, if it's, you know, the side of the screen, a cactus, you know, if it's there, I want it to bounce bullets. You know, the only things that shouldn't be bouncing bullets, probably, are enemies and the player. Everything else kind of a pinball approach. So, probably don't need a boolean to designate, you know, true or false whether it's a bumper, but instead probably going to have a bumper object, you know, kind of a bumper class, I guess, if you use C++ terminology or whatever. So that just kind of contains, you know, all that stuff. The bumper behavior, if a bullet hits this collision, it bounces off, you know, things like that. And then under that will probably be the different sprites, like you've got a tombstone or you've got a building, and maybe they behave differently. But so it'll, instead of a boolean, it'll just be a class in a way. So it's kind of like more than a boolean in a way. Oh, all right. Well, Runiclip said object. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will be designating the bumpers as objects. I should read ahead a little bit. Jimorian says first pass art can be very basic just to get an object into the game engine. Yes. One thing we're going to be breaking this up into, and actually should probably put it in the task list, you know, having rough art and final art. So, you know, what I'm going to be doing next week is going to be, you know, I'm not going to be spending a lot of time making the perfect cowboy or anything else. I'm probably just going to make a stick figure, basically, that has a hat. It's probably all you need. Just something to put collision around it. Kind of get an idea for size, how big it is. It's probably how I want to go about that. So yeah, I'll start with rough graphic art so you don't have to, you know, at least in the beginning until the game starts moving and stuff, you don't have to watch me, you know, spending hours and hours and hours trying to draw the perfect cowboy. It will just be very rough. So yeah, maybe those time estimates are way too much. Hour and a half. Let's cut those down, actually. So what I'm going to do, I think, is the proper way to do this would be to create a different task, like town level background image, for example. Rough. So you don't have to watch me spend the entire episode drawing some fancy picture. Whatever I can whip together in 30 minutes, you know, might even be faster than that if it is a rough. If all I want to do is get a game field out there, it's probably just going to be a giant yellow square to represent dirt. Putting that in the game, player sprite, again, let's break that out into rough. Okay, jumping off there. Player sprite, rough. That will be half an hour. And let's move the proper sprite to a later day. Bullet sprite, maybe it'll be a rough bullet in the beginning. Let's go ahead and make another one. "15 minutes, sure. I mean, a bullet can't be that difficult to draw, especially if I don't care how it looks. Let's see, action, movement, scripting, bumper, barrel sprite, bumpers, barrel, sprite, rough. Shoot. It won't even take half an hour, but because I'll probably just make a box. I don't want to move the collision down. I want to move the proper sprite down. There we go. So lay out the bumper objects players. Okay. Thank you for the idea of breaking this out into rough graphics and proper graphics, because, you know, had I not done that in my task list, I might have actually, one, you know, made a rough version first and forgot to brush it up later, or, you know, two, actually make the proper version first, which would have been a big waste of time. So yes, I will go do the rough stuff first so I can get into the game faster. Reniclip asks, could you make a variable or an enum that decides how well the object deflects the bullet? Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you know, the way a bullet reflects off a barrel or the way it reflects off a bell or a building might be different. I think that, let's see, let's put that in notes. I've got a notes column over on the right where I'm just going to keep track of, you know, thoughts and stuff. Should bullets reflect off of different bumpers differently? And that's a question I'll have to answer once things start getting moving, because it depends on the game screen and how much is going on. If things bump off of different things in different ways, that could either add to the flavor of the game or it might make things way too complicated. It just kind of depends on the pace, so that's kind of a question I'll have to answer later. But yeah, it's definitely worth keeping in mind. Thank you, Reniclip. So, let's see. I've got this task list. I know exactly what I need to be doing next week, which is making a rough of the town. I need to make a rough background image of the town. I need to put the town in the game. I need to create a rough player sprite, and I need to put that in the game. And that may actually take me the 2-hour chunk next week. So here's a warning about this list. There's always going to be more you can add to the list. You know, always. Every day you're going to have some kind of insight, some new system, some new thing that you want to add to it. That's fine. Keep adding to the list. You know, that story, no, let's see, that story column over there. Keep adding to it, keep adding to it, keep adding to it. But when you add to it, make sure that when you add something new, you remember what priority it is. Like, if it's just a flash idea, maybe you add it towards the end. If it's something really important, you add it towards the beginning. But if you're going to keep adding to this list, you're not going to know how much work there is to do, or, you know, you're never going to have a deadline, and the goal is to make a game. So it's probably a good idea to set a target, or you're never going to finish. This is a really hard thing to do, even for pros, even for teams, especially for teams. You know, pros usually get handed a deadline by a publisher or, you know, whoever's in charge of their development studio. But if you're doing this on your own, obviously you don't have someone telling you when you need to finish. But it's probably a good idea to have kind of a target date, good source of pressure, and it kind of keeps you on target so you're not fiddling around with stuff too much. So I'm going to set mine at about 6 months. You know, 6 months from now is going to be the end of the year. So, you know, whatever I can get done by December 31st, that sounds like a pretty good deadline. By then I want at least a complete game, you know, something playable. I can make that, you know, first alpha, you know, to use the terminology, you know, just a playable game that I could at least hand to someone, you know, who stops by this room and say, give it a shot, tell me what you think. That's probably not going to be the finished game, because 6 months may not be enough time, may be enough time, but at least I'll have a 6-month goal in mind to know, you know, what things are going to be more important. So now this list has some structure. I can keep adding to it, but there's only so much I can do. If I set a deadline, there's only so much I can do. So the lower priority stuff is just naturally going to, you know, as I put it in there, it's going to sift to the bottom. The important stuff rises to the top. And so the important stuff just naturally gets done. The unimportant stuff naturally doesn't get done. So to make sure I have a working game by that deadline that I set by the end of the year, I'm going to make good and sure I get something working fast. This is, you know, basically what I've been saying. Get a game, get a working game moving. Don't spend too much time on graphics, because you might change them. Don't spend too much time on music and sound because you never know what sound effects or music you're going to need in the beginning. It's nice to set atmosphere, but like I said a while back, you kind of want an ugly, ugly, ugly game in the beginning, because then you're not going to get distracted by graphics or animation or music or sound effects, things like that. You'll know if your game is working or not the uglier it is. So save all that stuff for last. I'm going to try to get a game working as fast as possible, so the kind of things that I make high priority are going to fit that goal. So I'll have something to play, proof that it's, if where I'm going is right or wrong, and that's going to allow me to better pick which things are more important. Maybe something I thought was important isn't so important once I start playing the game. So as you go through this list, try to keep track of how long things really took you. Like I put, half an hour for drawing, a rough background image or whatever. Later on, I'm going to have to draw a rough graveyard. I'm going to have to draw a rough night stage, all those different things. So if I keep track of, at first I thought it would take half an hour, but it actually took 2 hours. That's actually very valuable information, because next time when I put out, make a rough graveyard level, I'm going to know it takes 2 hours. And it's going to kind of teach you how you tend to estimate. People tend to underestimate. That's just the way it is. Murphy's Law. Things are always going to take longer than you expect them to. A lot of programmers just double the time they think it's going to take to keep safe, and even then it's usually not enough. So, but what's interesting is that different people tend to overestimate or underestimate in the same way. So if I'm thinking this will take half an hour or an hour, the kind of, if I'm always half an hour short, or if I'm always like things take twice as long as I think they do, then I'm going to kind of keep that in mind when I'm making future estimations, and it's going to help me better track, what I'm going to be able to get done by that deadline. It's a little more administration work, but if you can do it, it's definitely worth, keeping track of how long it takes you to finish these tasks, because it'll help in the end. You can really go nuts, and once you start to get your estimating pattern down, you can take the total number of hours left to the deadline. You can take, that priority list over there, and you can break it down. You can say all this stuff up to here is going to take X number of time. You could really go nuts with it once you have those numbers in hand, those statistics in hand. And you can decide, if your deadline is pushing it, you can decide, I need to move that deadline out further. Better to do that early than later, especially if you've got a publisher or something like that, because a publisher is never going to like you pushing out a deadline. Just like, a book publisher is not going to want you showing up late with your book. If you tell them 3 months in advance, yeah, a little miffed. If you tell them the day before, yeah, they're pretty pissed. So, this helps you decide if you need to move that deadline out further long before, you think you have to. This whole planning process that I went over is at the heart of something called agile development. I don't even want to call this agile, because I've just scraped, flicked the surface of what agile development is. There are conferences around the world as we speak with hundreds of people gathered around, talking about how to use it, how to make it better, what it is. So I'm never going to be able to explain it fully, not in this show, and that's not what you want. That's not what I want. I want to make a game. That's not why I'm here. But I did want to give you a bit of planning help in case it helps you reach the end of your project, because if you start a project without a plan or some method of planning, maybe you have a better one than this, that's fine. But for the people that don't, I hope, this gives you an idea for how you can break things down into tasks. Great thing about this is when you see things broken into tiny little chunks, it doesn't become so scary. If you just have, I want to make a Western 2D shooter, and you sit down in front of your keyboard and go, that's pretty scary. But if all I have to do is make a rough background of what the town is going to look like, or a rough player sketch, and I know that's all I have to do, it's not going to be scary to approach it. When I wake up in the morning at 7 a.m., I'm grabbing my coffee, it's not kicking in yet, I look at my task list, it's going to be a lot less scary to approach, which is why I really do recommend, looking into Agile, there's plenty of people on YouTube and everything else that describe it. They're called Scrum Masters. They've taken training. I've taken the training myself. Get some advice from them. If you do have specifics, like if it seems like I skipped over something, or you want to know a better idea for doing any of this stuff, send me, send me a tweet, be Tengu, send me, come to this bluetengu.com, leave a comment in YouTube, whatever. I'll try to answer the questions. If it's kind of, you don't want to make it public, you can write me at contact@bluetengu.com email address. So we've got our to-do list. That's pretty much all I plan to do for this week's show. Obviously, the show is going to be a lot more talky than future shows because it's setting up the project. It's trying to describe what this planning process is in case it helps you. But from next week, it's actually going to be getting things done, which means, me jumping into Photoshop or Illustrator, drawing stuff, opening up Game Maker, creating objects, putting it into games, showing scripting, things like that. It's going to be more the meat and bones of the project. This is the first episode. It's the planning episode. So, when we jump into Game Maker, I'm going to try to run through all the different things that are in the program itself. That'll be next week. But if you want to play around with it in advance, maybe it'd help understand what I'm talking about. So you can go to yoyogames.com, pick up the standard version for free. You can fiddle around with it. You can follow tutorials on YouTube. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this isn't a tutorial show per se. It's more just showing a game being made. So, if you want a detailed tutorial, probably a good idea to start hunting around for that stuff. And let's see. I think I will sign off here. Let me just show you Game Maker itself, just so you do know kind of what it looks like. I won't actually do anything with it. Let's hope it pops up. Okay, there we go. So when you fire up Game Maker, you get, just this intro screen. What we're going to be doing is starting a new project, so we'll go up to here, new project, name the project, create it, do all that sort of stuff. Let me just create one really quick just to show you what it is. So here, it looks much more complicated. Well, maybe to some of you it doesn't look that complicated, but to some of you this might look really complicated. It's not as visually friendly as something like Unity, but it's actually pretty friendly. You've got these different categories of things over here on the left. You've got sprites, those are the pictures. You've got sounds, obviously those are sounds. Backgrounds, those are going to be things, the pictures that go in the back of the game. Paths, those are, I believe, going to be like, enemy paths and things like that. Scripts, that's where everything happens, basically. The scripts are going to be what, takes a button. You push up and it makes the sprite go up. All those things that control that are going to be in scripts. Let's see. I think also variables are stored in there. Shaders, it's going to come at the very end, so don't worry about it now. It's just the way light plays off of things. I may not even use a shader for the game, I don't know. Fonts, those are obviously going to be the different fonts that you use in the game, so like all those things like score, high score, I'm going to be putting those into fonts and using them from there. Timelines, I think that's for animation for like demos and things, but I haven't actually done that. Objects, objects, kind of a concept with programming. For those of you that have done programming before, it's going to be really obvious what it is. Basically, an object is the thing. I have a character sprite maybe, but it's just a picture. To have this thing actually be a thing in the game, you have to make it an object. So what it could be is that the object contains all these little bits of information, like you could have, the object contains the picture of the character. It contains how many lives the character has. It contains all the list of animations and stuff like that. It's basically a package. Think of it like a package. Rooms, in GameMaker lingo, rooms are the stages. This is where you bring a background in, you decide how big it is, how wide it is, everything else. Included files, that's like for external stuff. I'm probably not even going to worry about that. Extensions, I'm probably not going to worry about that. Constants, let's see if it even shows. A constant is like a variable. A variable is something that stores information like score, 100, 200, 300. A constant is like a variable, but it doesn't change. So this is, for example, if you're doing a 3D game, a thing that might be a constant might be gravity, 9.8, meters per second squared or whatever. That might be your constant. It's something that's the same everywhere. Game information, this is more top-level stuff, like, more information about the game itself, global game settings. This is more GameMaker setup stuff. So I'm just going to jump out of that. Next week I'll get started on it properly. So, if you do have questions about what I'm doing, send them to me on the website www.bluetengu.com. I'll probably be posting this episode once I get it up on YouTube, and I'll probably make a post about it, so you can put comments there. You can put comments anywhere else. You can also write me at contact@bluetengu.com. You can private message me on Twitch. Let's see, where else can you get me? Twitter's great. btengu, that's just BTENGU. That's my Twitter handle. I am on Facebook, Blue Tengu Studio, and YouTube is also Blue Tengu Studio. All those links are going to be in the video post on bluetengu.com, so that's probably the easiest way to go to find, where you want to get in touch with me. But I hope in doing this that I can inspire some of you to, go out and do this yourself. It's not really that hard to make a game. As long as you break it down into little tasks, no matter how bad an artist you are. I'm horrible. You will find out very soon how bad I am. Whether it's making music, sound effects, all of those things I'm bad at, because that's not what I do for a living. But, it can get done. Just break it down into tasks. Know what you have to do. Create a routine. Come in at a set time. Do a certain amount of time per week, whatever that is. Make sure you have no distractions. Go to it. And just little by little, whittle those things down, and you'll have a game at the end. It's not that scary. Whether it's going to be the next Halo or not, put that to the side. That's especially if it's your first game. Don't even worry about that stuff. Just make a game. That's all you need to do. Because, this thing I'm making is probably not going to turn out like I hope. When you make your first game, it's not going to turn out like you hope. The important thing is making it, because once you make it and you decide to make your next game, you're going to have all this information behind you when you're making decisions about tools, what you want to do, scheduling, everything else. Suddenly, all these other games that you're playing, everything just magically will make sense and actually start to become input rather than just this passive thing that you consume. So the important thing is make something simple, just make it, get it done. And that's what we're going to be trying to do here. Obviously, if I wasn't doing the live stream, answering questions, doing things like that, this would probably go a lot faster. So for you, if you're not doing this live, it will go a lot faster, because you're just going to be jumping around doing things, drawing stuff. But, I want to do this as kind of a special concept to get some people out there interested in doing this stuff. If you do have ideas, if you do have, let's see, opinions, like Uniclip mentioned a few things that have already helped me improve the show. Jimorian has already mentioned things that have helped me improve the show. The people in the Twitch chat so far, great. I wasn't expecting it to be this good so far. Love you guys giving your opinions, so give them to me wherever you can. Go to bluetengu.com, find me. Let's see. Next week, like I said, on the task list there, the first things I'm going to be doing are making a rough image, rough character, putting it in the game. Probably by the end of next week, I might be able to get it moving around. It's not much, but it's something. And that's the important thing, is to do something every time. And I will be doing this next week from, well, the same time I'm doing it now, which is in Japan. That's 8 a.m. Saturday morning. For you guys in, let's see, I should probably figure out the times. All the stuff is in the Twitch information at the bottom. So for Pacific Daylight Time, that's 4 p.m. on Fridays, Mountain 5, Central 6, Eastern 7, Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. That's 10. Central Daylight Time is 9:30. Western Daylight Time 8. New Zealand noon, and those are all Saturday like Japan. For those of you in the UK watching this, this will be midnight, so it's kind of hard to say which day it is. Friday going into Saturday, that midnight. So, and I will be doing this for probably 2 hours. Today I went long because there was a lot of stuff to go over, and I didn't want to just, cut the episode off in the middle of planning, because then nothing makes any sense, and as an episode it's probably not a very good package. So I did go 3 hours this time. Underestimated, right? Exactly. So I'll know that next time. But from next week I'll probably be keeping it 2 hours to make sure I'm not just sitting here talking forever, and you can consume this without wasting too much of your time, because you obviously don't want to watch me doing this for hours and hours and hours. So let me just thank all of you guys that are watching. Try to keep it a little personal, since I don't have that many people, firing messages at me. There we go. Okay, so let's pull off Trello. Let's go back to this. So that concludes episode 1 of Blue Tengu Season 1, which, as I said, I hope runs to the end of the year. This was mostly planning. Next week it will actually be getting into the meat of the game. So thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next week. You can catch me on YouTube, Blue Tengu Studio, bluetengu.com, any of those places. Find me. All that stuff's in the Twitch feed, and if you're watching this on YouTube, all of it should be in the profile, and I'll include a link to the site on the YouTube page. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for all of your advice, guys. I do appreciate it. And I hope to see you next week, and I hope to do even better next week. Well, at least I hope to do better, if you can call this good. So, with that, thank you guys for watching, and I will sign off. Goodbye.